Last week was Passover, and it reminded me again of how unusual the Yiddish word for Passover is. Read this. Did you read Pesach? That's what you would expect. In Hasidic Yiddish, you might expect this to be pronounced Pesach, with this vowel here, segel, being pronounced A in such a context in Hasidic pronunciation. But is that how it's pronounced? Well, not really. It's actually pronounced Pesach, as if the vowel mark there were a tzairai. Why is it written with a segel, but pronounced as if it were written with a tzairai? This has to do with an interesting sound shift that happened towards the beginning of the history of the Yiddish language. To simplify it a bit, back in those days, the segel made a short sound, and the tzairai made a long sound. However, it was common for the vowel of an open syllable to become long. In less linguistic jargon, when a word had a syllable that did not end in a consonant, it was common for people to pronounce the vowel of that syllable longer. So taking the word Pesach, it was indeed originally pronounced Pesach, like any normal word with a segel would. However, the syllables of Pesach are pe, sach, and since the first syllable here, pe, doesn't end in a consonant, people started pronouncing it pe, making Pesach, meaning that the pronunciation of the vowel in Pesach merged with the pronunciation of the vowel tzairai, at that point pronounced e. However, since the word is of Hebrew origin, the spelling was never updated. The long e sound in Yiddish later became an a sound, and Pesach came to be pronounced as Pesach. This e to a change is why tzairai is pronounced like a in Russian and Lithuanian Yiddish dialects. In Polish and Hungarian Yiddish dialects, and therefore in Hasidic Yiddish, the A sound came to be pronounced I, giving us the pronunciation that we have today, Pesach. Again, this is all a bit of a simplification, but it's enough for our purposes here. There are actually more words that went through the same vowel journey as Pesach. For example, tzadaikas, kaivir, and raivach, meaning righteous woman, grave, and extra, abundant. All written with a segel, but pronounced as if it were written with a tzairai. You may notice that all the words I mentioned are of Hebrew origin. However, this vowel change affects these only when using them in Yiddish. So if you were to see the word raivach, for example, in a Hebrew language text, you wouldn't pronounce it as raivach, but as revach. That is because the vowel change only applies to words that were fully naturalized into Yiddish when using them in Yiddish. This also opens a whole nother can of worms regarding liturgical pronunciation, but that's for another time. This creates an interesting situation where there are words that have doublets, meaning that Yiddish sometimes has two forms of the same word, one with the original segel pronunciation and one with the new tzairai pronunciation, and they mean different things. For example, tselem, with the original segel, is commonly used in the expression tselem Elokim, meaning image of God, as in the image of God with which God created man. Tselem on its own means an image or sculpture, and commonly refers to images or sculptures or other physical representations of deities specifically. Slap onto it the segel to tzairai sound shift and add some context of Christianity to it, and now you have a new word, tselem, meaning Christian cross. For another example, melech. With the original segel, it means a king. It used to be a lot more common in spoken Yiddish, but is now mostly a literary word, at least in Hasidic Yiddish. Melech, with the segel sounding like a tzairai, is a common boy's name and is a clipping of the longer name Elimelech. The name Elimelech comes from the biblical name Elimelech, meaning my God is king. Can you think of any more such words?